In 1793, a British delegation arrived in China carrying the most advanced scientific instruments, precision clocks, and a steam engine model of the age. The Qianlong Emperor took one look and replied to the effect that the Celestial Empire possessed all things in abundance and had no need for foreign goods. The irony is that the core technologies behind these gifts, gunpowder, printing, the compass, all originated in China. A civilization that had invented the tools which reshaped the world could no longer recognize what those tools had become. This is not a story about falling behind. It is a story about why the one who was ahead stopped moving. Consider first just how far ahead China was. In the 11th century, the Northern Song dynasty's annual iron output may have reached over 120,000 tons, according to scholarly estimates, a level Europe would not match until the early stages of the Industrial Revolution 7 centuries later. Paper currency circulated nationwide, movable type had already been invented, gunpowder was being systematically applied in warfare, the compass was making open ocean navigation possible. If a global technology ranking had existed in the year 1100, China would have stood at the very top, and not by a narrow margin, but by a generational gap. Yet over the centuries that followed, these technologies did not vanish, and incremental improvements never entirely stopped, but they remained locked in a pattern of gradual refinement rather than systemic breakthrough. Gunpowder never evolved into a firearms system that rewrote the rules of war. Printing never triggered a revolution in the democratization of knowledge. The compass never drove exploration and expansion on a global scale. When these same technologies reached Europe, they detonated within a few centuries a military revolution, the Reformation, the Age of Exploration, and the Industrial Revolution. The same seeds, planted in two different soils, produced entirely different things. The most common explanation is that Chinese culture did not value science, but the technological explosion of the Song dynasty alone disproves this. The problem was never the starting point, but what came after. Others point to isolationism, but even after the extraordinary voyages of Zheng He, he across 7 expeditions to Southeast Asia, the Indian Ocean, and the coast of Africa, the technological trajectory did not continue forward. Isolation was a symptom, not a cause. The real answer lies not in culture or in any single policy, but in a structural difference: competition. Europe had dozens of roughly equal states locked in perpetual conflict where any improvement in military technology was a matter of national survival. When France improved its cannons, Spain had to match them or face annihilation in the next war. Military rivalry was only one engine among several. Religious schism created explosive demand for printed material. A merchant class and early capital markets provided funding and commercial channels for technological refinement, multiple lines of competition running simultaneously, each accelerating the others. China's situation was the exact opposite. For most of its history, there was a single empire with no peer competitor. Once gunpowder had been invented, its use in siege defense and basic warfare was sufficient. No rival existed to force it further. The most ironic proof appeared in the late Ming Dynasty, when the court began importing Portuguese cannons, known as the Red Barbarian cannons. A civilization that had invented gunpowder was buying back weapons made from its own invention, because Europe's competitive environment had pushed the same technology to heights China could no longer reach. The absence of competitive pressure was only the first layer. Deeper still, the empire's institutional design locked innovation at the level of good enough. The civil examination system funneled the brightest minds in society onto a single track: studying the classics, passing exams, entering the bureaucracy. A talented individual who spent 30 years refining gunpowder would earn far less reward than one who spent 30 years preparing for the imperial examinations. The empire's economic structure revolved around agricultural taxation. Merchants occupied a low social rank, and technological invention lacked any viable channel for commercialization or capital support. Europe was the mirror image. No unified examination system monopolized the path to elite status. The merchant class was independent and powerful, and urban self-governance provided space for technological experimentation and commercial application. It was not that the Chinese lacked creativity. The system simply directed creativity elsewhere. Push this logic one layer deeper, and it arrives at a fundamental paradox running through the entirety of Chinese history. The institutional framework that allowed China to reunify again and again, the commandery and county system, the civil examinations, the household registration system, the standardization of weights and measures, was never designed to produce innovation. It was designed to produce stability. The ultimate purpose of every one of these institutions was to keep the empire controllable, predictable, and capable of rebooting after collapse. Innovation, by its very nature, is uncontrollable, unpredictable, and disruptive. A system designed for stability will never spontaneously incentivize instability. This was not the short-sightedness of any particular emperor. It was the inevitable consequence of the system's own logic. It was precisely because China was unified that competition disappeared. And it was precisely because there was no competition that technology stopped accelerating. What made China great and what made China stop were, from the very beginning, the same thing. This is not a story about failure. It is a story about a choice made over 2,000 years ago, and how it shaped every possibility and impossibility that followed.